everybody. Welcome. My name is Bob Goodwin, founder of Career Club, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Cool Companies You Should Know. Career Club, if you're not familiar with us, we focus on companies that are in high growth mode. Oftentimes, they're the companies that you may not be familiar with. They're not household names yet, and yet they've received usually tremendous amounts of funding, and they're on a high growth trajectory. And it's our pleasure to introduce you to companies just like those. So with that, today, I'd like to introduce our guest from Engage3, Edris Bemanian. Edris?
Hey, Bob.
Hey, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. So where do we find you today? Where are you?
I'm in Davis, California. So this is a green screen background. So don't be fooled by the background, but this is where we're headquartered. It's about 15 miles from Sacramento, California, and about 70 miles from San Francisco, California.
Awesome. So just as a little bit of an icebreaker, just a little bit about you, Edris, where you're from, where you went to school, a little bit maybe about your career, things like that.
Yeah, happy to. So I've been with Engage3 for almost 9 years now, which is very interesting to reflect on, because I remember back in the day thinking, hey, there's no way I'm going to stay with one company for more than 2 or 3 years at a time. And here I am, 3 times over, having exceeded that. And the reason is because I love what I do. I love this company. I love the team. Prior to Engage3, I just happened to be at the intersection of retail technology and retail without intentionally realizing that was my path. So worked with Sodexo, which is a large food service company. Worked with them, and now which is a media company that many might have heard of on the supply chain side, and then have worked with companies like Mercado, which provide e-commerce solutions to e-commerce retailers, and so on. And I've always just been fascinated with startups. So any chance I got, I've been engaged with different types of startups. The reason behind us being at Davis, California, because there aren't that many startups in Davis, California, although it's growing, and you should track Davis, California. Is that I actually went to undergrad at UC Davis. And so I studied economics and environmental policy here. And our founder, one of our 2 founders, who are Ken and Tim May, they did their undergrad degree in Davis as well. And so at one point we had an office in Davis, California, as well as San Francisco. And we ran them in parallel. And we just saw that we were getting a good result out of being headquartered in Davis, both because we were able to recruit aggressively out of the university, but also because we were, getting white glove treatment for being out here. And so, as you can imagine, we found people who were looking for startups, but wanted to be more in this type of geographic area. And we're in it for the long run. So that's resonated with us. That's worked out for us so far.
What's Edris doing when he's not at work?
When I'm not at work, every chance I get, I like to play tennis or soccer. Can be kind of hard if you don't sign up for an actual league to hold yourself accountable, because you always shift back to the things you could do for a startup, but that's been helpful. And then I like to travel. So mostly soccer, tennis, travel, skiing.
Cool. Awesome. I'm going to hang out with you. Now, a couple things that you said that sort of strike me. One is, just from the conception or preconceived notion or whatever of a startup, you've been there for 9 years and the company was right. So startups aren't just started last week. They're not all just in the basement, and we're filling jelly jars to go sell. It's like, it's a long haul game, which is cool. 2 is, the idea that you guys kind of met, around UC Davis, right? And there's a little bit of serendipity. Sometimes it happens. You're talking about like your career path kind of found you a little bit in retail. And, I think that's cool. And then you sort of find your lane over time. So that's cool. Now, the brothers' names again are what?
Ken and Tim May.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when they started the company, what was the problem they solved in the marketplace, and how did they seek to kind of uniquely solve for that?
They have a fascinating background, actually. It's a great story. So they grew up in what is arguably was the first competitive price collection company in the world. And so their parents started a company in Mississauga in Canada, and it was all around the idea of, hey, let's collect this data, this market data, and provide it to retailers and to brands and help them figure out, how they should go about their pricing strategies, because they need the data. So much of it prior to that was art. So at the ages of 4 and 6 or 5 and 7, they were driving around Canada doing data collection. And so, as you can imagine, if that's what you're doing day in, day out as a child, it's what you think about. And so when Ken, one of our founders, was doing his PhD work in theoretical physics at UC Santa Barbara, he realized, a lot of my friends are going off into Wall Street and applying models there to make people a lot of money. But what if you actually can take those concepts and apply them to retail pricing? And so he actually shifted and focused on that. His brother Tim sold the business he had started, which was a pool business. And they started Kaimetrics. And Kaimetrics was the first retail price optimization company. And it was credited with inventing the retail revenue management category as a whole. And so they're able to consistently push 100 basis points of sales to the bottom line. And within retail, that's a huge impact. Yeah. And that company ultimately got acquired by SAP in 2006. And that's all exciting. Ken stayed on as the chief data scientist there for a few years. But then they realized that there was still a lot of opportunity left on the table. And they saw that with mobile technology coming up and information becoming accessible at consumers' fingertips, that there were some new trends that were coming about. And so they realized, what if we actually go back and we figure out how to further segment pricing to account for the truly individual's preferences? So as an example, you can set prices at the store and shelf level, but what about Bob? What are Bob's preferences? What about Ed? What are Ed's preferences? And so the idea around Engage3 formed, which was how do we actually improve outcomes for retailers, manufacturers, and consumers, and do that by revolutionizing the way products are bought and sold. And so they started Engage3 to go after that mission. And to tie it back to your comment about startups aren't always 1 year, 2 year types of stints. They built out this company or it founded this company, and we've been building upon that. And we've had a number of evolutions here. We started out as a shopping application where we were able to save consumers 40% up to 40% of their shopping trips just by helping them identify where they should shift their trips to and be more efficient. And as we got more progress there, we saw that, hey, there's a lot of power here. There's a lot we can do by understanding every individual's preferences and whether they care about gluten-free, whether they care about non-GMO, whether they care about environmental attributes and other types of things, and being able to meet those consumers where they want to be met, because that's where retailers and brands want to go too. Right. So there's a clear target here that's a win-win-win between the three, and we're focused on figuring out the pricing component of that. How do we identify the prices and the combination of offers that will allow everyone in that group to win? Because retailers want to engender loyalty with their customers. Brands want to engender loyalty with customers as well, right? As they compete more with private label and other alternative options. And consumers are looking to be treated fairly and find the products they want easily. And so that's how this company came about. And we've had a number of evolutions, but since 2015, we've been very focused on our strategy, which is to work with retailers and manufacturers and help them understand what the market is saying regarding prices and products. And then working with them to then understand how they're being perceived in the market. And now we're helping them figure out what do they actually do with that information, right? What are the prices that they should set to achieve those outcomes? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Now, having spent a little bit of time on the website, you guys talk about price image.
Yeah.
Can you kind of help people understand what price image is?
Yeah. It's fascinating. So a lot of the solutions that are out in the marketplace today were built on science and statistical models that were built in the early 2000s, and they haven't really evolved a lot since then.
Okay.
And so what we've done is we've invested significantly in models that actually identify and understand consumer behavior and psychological models that help us understand how are these prices actually being perceived and which are the products and the prices that are driving the most impact on perception. So as an example, one of our customers might be priced 3% above the market, but they might be perceived to be priced 15% above the market. Well, that's unfortunate for them, right? Because they put a lot of effort into being within 3% of the market. So how do we identify the products and prices that are driving that perception, help them get control of those so that they can more closely be aligned to where they actually are in the market and perhaps even improve their positioning in the market? So sometimes you might have a set of items that are within a shopper's basket that drive a disproportionate amount of perception. And those are hard to identify if you're just looking at the old statistical models that previously did that work for you. And so we've focused heavily on building out a team and building out products and models that allow us to get to that.
So is this marrying like POS data with survey data, or because it's really interesting, so much, kind of your earlier point, traditional pricing work is just, running pretty aggressive models against POS data or retailer data or whatever. But then we've got the consumer perception image part, and I get kind of curious how those get married.
Yeah, it's what you described, but we're also bringing in billions of prices a week that we collect around online and in-store channels. So we know what all of the store-specific, product-specific prices are, and we collect and own that data. And then we also bring to it data from proprietary data from our partnerships with companies like Nielsen, to provide exclusive proprietary access to some of the data sets we work with. So we bring those together. We work with the POS data. We have very robust models, and we understand the retailer's different pricing strategies and the brand strategies. And together we can bring all those together to identify what is the price image within a market and what's driving that price image within a market. And then we can also step back and look, how about across your total portfolio of stores and categories and departments?
No, super cool. So obviously the investor community, is seeing, like a lot of runway for you guys, because if I got my numbers right, you guys have raised $59 million in total and recently closed a $35 million Series D round. Is that right?
We did just close that round. Yeah. And what the investors are seeing is, as an example, today we're working with, it used to be 5, but now it's, as of the last week, it's 6 of the 10 largest retailers in the world. And that's because there's a huge problem statement here. A lot of companies either have the systems but don't have data, so you have garbage in and then garbage out situations, which Bob, you're very familiar with, right? And what you've had to deal with in the past. And then in other cases, they might have data, but they don't really have sound systems that help them identify really what's driving that image or perception, and they're relying on these old models. Most of the time we'll find that they need both, and so we'll come in and we'll deploy that system, and we've been able to grow our customer base pretty aggressively as a result of the innovation behind the products and the fact that we have an end-to-end solution. And the investors have recognized that, and they've also recognized that, hey, these guys are really scratching the surface, right? They're at the beginning of their journey. Because there's so much more to do as we go down to, as I mentioned, the more granular, individualized levels of who needs what offer for what product at what time. That's where we've seen that we can drive 300 plus basis points of profit improvement and make it a win-win for everyone involved. But even today, with what we're doing, we're driving north of 100 basis points profit improvement while driving improved loyalty for our customers, with customers who are working with our solutions. So the investors see that and they track those unit metrics.
So in kind of this, inflation environment that we find ourselves in, and like everybody's like way more sensitized to pricing than maybe they were just a few months ago. How's that kind of playing into your all's go to market and kind of the reception from your clients?
Yeah. What a lot of people don't think about all the time is that the pressures from inflation and the supply chain are impacting the retailers and brands significantly too, right? It's not that they're evil corporations that want to just maximize profits, right? They know they have to drive loyalty, and they know that they have to be competitive, but they have to make money while they're doing that to stay in business. And so a lot of consumers might not perceive that and understand that. And so the point here is that if you're blind to what your competitors are doing in the market as a first step, and when they're taking price increases up or where they're taking cost and absorbing it, it's challenging to figure out how to respond in your own model. So step one is we provide all this market data that we're collecting, and our customers can tap into that and understand, what are my competitors doing? More importantly, though, it's important to understand, well, again, if I know what drives my price image, what are the items, categories, departments that drive my image, and how do they vary across these markets? We know that shoppers in Austin or Texas are different from Houston, Texas. We know within Houston, Texas, there are, many times 3 different price zones or strategies even within Houston alone. And so when we look at those different things, it's important for our customers to understand, in this case, retailers and brands, to understand what are the items that my customers really care about, that I need to ensure that they're treated fairly on, and where are they willing to pay more, and what are my differentiators relative to market and to my named competitors. And so because of the fact that there's inflation happening, there's supply chain issues, more transactions are shifting to online and e-commerce, we bring those together to understand and equip our customers with what their price response should be and how they should think about their total portfolio. And so that's driven a lot of demand for the solutions as well.
So you brought up a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. One is, this is an omni-channel tool. It's not just brick and mortar or just online.
That's right. Yeah.
And you guys are doing price collection in store. So it's not just price scraping on the web.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge by itself. And then FMCG and non-FMCG, or kind of the categories or sectors.
Yeah, that's right. So it's everything now. So previously we were focused on FMCG, but we've been expanding into non-FMCG pretty aggressively. So whether you're thinking furniture, sporting goods, electronics, even apparel, we're getting into those spaces. And some of those categories are even more challenging than FMCG.
I was going to say, I started leaving the apparel business for one of my former employers. That is a hot mess. There are a gazillion SKUs. That is really a tough sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you have to approach those problems with science and technology versus approaching them overly manually. And so we've been investing pretty aggressively, and that's part of our series. The investment is intended to go towards enhancing the science that we have even further and making sure it applies more broadly outside of our core areas.
So channels, categories. What about geographic footprint?
Oh yeah. So we're launching into 30 countries this year, which is
30.
Yeah, we're launching into 30 countries this year. And so we hired a general manager of international. His name's Steven, and he's got tremendous experience. And so he's leading the charge there. But we've got a number of countries already signed up, and now we're just implementing there. And then we've got others that are part of our phase 4 for the year. But we're excited about that. And we've been hiring pretty aggressively as a result. So we've been expanding our customer success team. We've been expanding our solutions engineering teams, our technology teams to go and in anticipation of that growth. And I think if things play out the way that they look that they're playing out, we might see a higher number than 30 even.
So that's really exciting. If we could pivot a little bit, one of the things that I love about doing this series and what I think our listeners really enjoy is getting to hear you and see you, and it kind of humanizes the company, and you're not just $39 million or $35 million raise. It's like, no, these are real people, and I'm going to go work with real people, a real company. And so could you talk maybe beginning as a CEO about the leadership style that you have, that your ELT has, and then how that is informing the culture that you guys are building?
One thing that our founders did a phenomenal job of, in my opinion, when they started this company, was building an environment that was focused on growth and where it identified and rewarded people who wanted to make an impact. And I benefited from that here, and many others have as well. So one of our core values is having a growth-focused mindset. I think that's what we really look for. So one of the reasons that I've stayed for 9 years, right, even though I told you I thought I'd have a cap of 2 to 3 years per company, was because we've had this environment where if you want to put in more, you have the ability to. And it's not just that you have the ability, but you're encouraged to, and you're celebrated for doing that. And so we've seen that happen time and again at Engage3, where people who at all kinds of stages of their career, right, early, or people who said, this is my last gig, right, I just want to do something fun for my last gig. We've had that whole spectrum, and everyone within that spectrum has demonstrated an ability to come in and take on more responsibility or drive more of an impact. And there's kind of a cliche saying out there, which is, you're the CEO of your job. But I actually endorse that heavily here. So, just because I'm the CEO of Engage3 as a total company, doesn't mean we don't have many CEOs within the company. We have people who really own their functional areas, and we have conversations with them about what they can own beyond that. So for those who are looking for a growth-focused mindset and one where they can drive a lot of impact, Engage3 is a really good environment because we're growing so quickly and growing so much. We really need that help. And that's, independent of any other demographics you might think of, right? It really just comes down to ability and mindset.
Yep. So it sounds like a meritocracy.
Yeah. I love that word. I love meritocracy. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you're welcome. You can use that one. But what are some of the other values? Because there's, just a dictionary full of values that people would espouse. But if you really kind of speak from the heart, what are the values that you guys are building at Engage3?
Yeah, we crowdsourced our values back in 2015, and they've held strong. And evaluated as a company whether we would evolve or change them. And we made some minor changes over the way, but we've been able to stay true to them. So one of them is ownership. We used to call it accountability. We evolved it to ownership as we had a all hands kind of company review of our core values. And what we mean by that is, again, coming back to the CEO comment, right? You are the CEO of your space. You are the CEO of the outcome and the results. And so we really try to drive and encourage that, but it kind of has happened organically, thankfully. And then the other value that we have is, this is an interesting one. It's rigorous honesty. And the reason that we thought that was important, again, we crowdsourced these, so they were voted on by the team and embraced by the team years ago, is because you can have a growth focused mindset and just be really optimistic and excited about growth, but if you don't take a step back and address the realities of what your constraints or your challenges are, then you're going to end up with a lopsided system. And so we see those two as balancing each other out, where we're incredibly eager, excited, and aggressive about our growth, but we also are rigorously honest about what challenges are ahead of us and what we need to do differently. So those are the three core values. So I want just to go over them again: growth focused mindset, rigorous honesty, and then ownership.
Yeah, the rigorous honesty reminds me of the classic Good to Great, where Jim Collins just keeps talking about, facing the brutal facts. It's not. It is what it is, and if this isn't working, we need to call it what it is and move on, and figure a new solution out. So that's great. How much has the company grown from a headcount perspective over pick some time period, 3-5 years?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, we were close to 60. Now we're 130 and growing. So
and what would you expect to be by the end of the year or end of next year?
I think by the end of this year, we'll actually be north of 200.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we're growing very aggressively. And so that's, again, across the board. So it's not specific to any one function, but we've grown our go-to-market team pretty aggressively, because previously we had just a very small group of folks working on sales and customer success. We hired a VP of customer success from Nielsen, who's phenomenal, and she's building out her team. We've got a really strong data science team across a couple of different functions, those that work on our price image models, those that work more on analytics, data management. And so between our data science and data analytics and data engineering teams, we're expecting a lot of growth. And then our solutions engineers, who ensure that our customers get the value that they're looking for out of our solutions. We're growing that team pretty aggressively as well. We're headquartered in Davis. We have an office in Scottsdale, Arizona, as well. But really, we've been looking globally. So we're agnostic of geography, and are more so looking for people who can bring an impact to the table and who surface that somehow through the interview process.
Is that you kind of anticipated one of my questions, framed slightly differently. In light of that, is that a pandemic realization, or were you guys kind of already in that mode?
We've always been a global company. We've always been pretty distributed, but the pandemic did accelerate how we embraced it. So we've now, for example, we didn't have many people in Atlanta, Georgia, but now we have quite a few people in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's because we tapped into a really strong talent pool there. We would not have done that otherwise, at least at the rate with which we've done it. So the pandemic helped us accelerate where we were going, is how I would say that. And then we've also been able to find and have had for a number of years fantastic folks in Eastern Europe, in India, also in a few other countries as well, Canada, and we've been able to tap into those and embrace those talent markets too. I think I don't want to go
off on a weird tangent, but with respect to Eastern Europe, has the things that have been going on in Ukraine impacted you guys?
Yeah, we have a strong team of developers who are actually in Belarus, and so we're always worried about them and want to make sure that they're doing well. And then obviously just empathy for everyone in Ukraine dealing with that solution or that crisis. But we haven't had any team members specifically in Ukraine.
Yeah. So, how does somebody get promoted at Engage3? I mean, and I think I kind of probably have a decent idea of where you're going to go with this based on what you've already said. But, people are, and you're kind of probably the poster child for this, looking for growth opportunities and, to continue to be rewarded, as they contribute. You don't have to name anybody, but, just maybe thinking, of a couple like representative folks. What did they do that got them promoted and continues to, you have your eye on them?
Yeah. It's particularly been folks who've brought forward new ideas and have actually taken steps towards implementing them or qualifying those ideas. I think that is probably the best indicator of demonstrating that someone wants to go above and beyond their role and take on more. So we've got a bunch of examples where we have leaders in different departments who've done exactly that, whether it was in the business development, product, recruiting, or any other functional area, data science. And those folks, both met the expectations that we had of them and that their managers had of them, but then said, hey, here's something I've been playing with and I've been able to see some initial results with that I'd love to expand upon. Or they say, hey, here's some ideas I have, this is how I'd go about it, and here's what support I need. And we would want to typically lean in and support them because they're usually aligned with our overall organizational objectives. And we've been able to see through the course of that, hey, this new process that you introduced that we didn't think about, big impact, right? We want to scale that. This approach that you took to ensuring that our customers get what they need, fantastic. We hadn't thought about that before. We want to make sure that, we see you as a runner in our organization. That's what we call it. Mm-hmm. And because you're a runner, we want to unencumber you from other things so you can go focus on that impact. And so I think it's really wearing the CEO hat and thinking about, how do I maximize X within my departmental metrics?
Yeah, it's funny, as you were kind of giving your answer, I was thinking about, well, this ties back to that CEO mentality and ownership.
Yeah.
Right? An owner, a CEO is going to not wait for somebody to say, hey, go solve that or whatever. They're like, hey, I see a problem or an opportunity. Here's an idea to go solve that, or maybe it's something I've been doing, and basically kind of running to it. Mm-hmm. And then I'll see you guys like, hey, what are you doing? That looks cool. We should be more of that. So that's great. It's interesting too, back to just sort of the notion of startups. That should be what's very appealing to somebody about working at a younger company, instead of, you're an E5 and you fit in this box and that's all you do. And we've got it all scripted out for you. And I guess for some people, that's comfortable. But for other people, that would drive them insane with boredom or feeling restricted or not growing. And so I can see where that culture that you've fostered, and I really like this notion of CEO of whatever it is that you're doing. And like, if you can bring that mindset and not just, hey, I'm an employee and, waiting for my paycheck every other week, those people will be runners. That's a great term. Where did runners come from? I love that.
It's this book called Move Your Bus that I read, and I was just fascinated by. What's interesting about it is the guy who wrote it was a principal at a private school, and it wasn't like he wasn't a 10x startup entrepreneur guy who's seen the movie a bunch of times. He was more so looking at how his best performers in terms of the education field were performing and how he incentivized them and measured them, and it was actually really impactful to me.
And then what's the name of it again?
Move Your Bus.
Okay.
Yeah. We bought copies of that book for everyone on our leadership team, and I've bought that for quite a few people on holidays too. So yeah, it's a good one. And the idea is, every organization needs all the segments, right? They need your runners, joggers, walkers, and they'll play their different roles. So, but the idea is just those who want to be, runners. How do you make sure that they're unblocked and unencumbered? That they're supported and getting the resources they need, because if they're driving an outsized impact, let's give them, outsized resources as a result. Mm-hmm. And so going back to your point about meritocracy, that guides a lot of, how our leadership team has thought about things. What's nice is that we've developed an operative leadership team as well. And it's the folks that make the track, the trains run on time. That's the phrase. And so they've actually been bringing in their new ideas and evolving and building upon things that they've learned at other companies, or they've seen work at Engage3, or just other ideas that they've gotten from their advisors. And so there's a lot of disruption going on in even our organizational development processes at Engage3, and that's a good thing.
So bringing this home a little bit, so sounds like there's a lot of product opportunities. There's a lot of channel opportunities, a lot of geographical opportunities.
Yeah.
Thinking about your human resource needs moving forward as we get to 200 or 200 plus,
Yeah.
functionally or kind of attributes, character qualities like that. What are you guys looking for? And for our listeners, how will they know, hey, they might be looking for me?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much of it is around tenacity. And there are a lot of ways that you can demonstrate tenacity from the beginning of the job search process to the end. A lot of people do the whole spray and pray kind of approach with looking for jobs, and you kind of have to do it to some extent, right? But if you find an opportunity that you particularly like and are particularly interested in, there's this assumption that people don't read the emails that you might send. But that's actually an unfortunate assumption, because if you directly email the hiring manager or HR with a compelling reason for why that you think you would be a great addition to the team, then if it truly was well written and speaks to the role, you're going to get a response, or your odds of getting a response are much higher. And so as I think about Engage3 and our open roles, right, as I said earlier, data scientists, data analysts, product managers. I mean, we're hiring across the board. And we get a lot of applicants, as all companies do. But we read the emails we get. And so if you look at the role and you look at the company, and, either whether it's because you bring, certain technical expertise that, because, I've got a lot of experience in Python programming, I've got a lot of SQL experience, or, hey, I've got a lot of visualization engineering or customer success management, right? There are certain things that candidates can bring to the table and have a differentiation around. And if you really surface that and help tie it back to the company's either mission or stated goals in the job description, or what you've seen recently in the press about Engage3, it's going to resonate.
No, well, that is massively music to my ears, because that's what we're teaching people at Career Club is, essentially, for me, bringing sales sensibilities, because that's what salespeople do. They know their value proposition, they know their pitch, they figure out who their territory is, like who should be the target audience for this, and they proactively reach out. And one of the other things we teach people is the way you go about your job search says a lot about how you go about your job. So you're talking about, taking, that sense of ownership, and I'm not waiting for something to happen. I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to reach out to people that can do something about it. And, we have found that's a very differentiating behavior, because most people kind of hide behind the online poll and just, kind of meekly submit 1,000 applications and wonder why nobody's getting back to them.
Yeah. I could not agree more with your statement. and then to your point, right, Bob, there's a huge difference between creating a curated email that you then again blast to maybe dozens of, instead, versus tailoring it to the individual companies, right? If you find a company in a role that you're particularly interested in, treat it like a sales cycle, right? You can't just passively apply and hope that you get picked out, because you're one of many, and even the best recruiters with the best intents, or the best applicant tracking systems with the right logic and even AI associated with it, might miss you. And so don't leave it to chance, right?
Well, and that's exactly it, is not leaving it to chance. So is there anything, because I've been directing the conversation a little bit, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really like to share about Engage3, or and if not, is there a point that you would like to just re-emphasize as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. I realize I left one of your earlier questions unanswered, so maybe I'll just come around to that, which was the why did I join Engage3, and hopefully it's maybe a good way to close it out. I was looking for an environment where I knew I could make an impact, but I knew I could learn a lot as well. And I knew that as I looked around at the founding team with their prior successes, and the other folks that they had on, the advisors, the board, I recognized, hey, this is a place where, one, I could learn a lot, but two, I see that they are hungry for help in a lot of different areas. But the other side of it that resonated with me was the actual purpose that I described, right? So improving outcomes for retailers, manufacturers, and consumers. What does that actually mean? Well, I mentioned that I'd studied economics and environmental policy, and what really resonated with me was the idea that, hey, if people care a lot about certain things, right, whether it's health outcomes, environmental outcomes, or financial outcomes,
yes,
being able to meet them where they want to be met and leveraging, analytics and data to do that is very exciting. And so for me, I joined because I thought, hey, for those who care about sustainability, right, and want to incorporate that into their purchasing cycles, how do we help make their shopping trips easier, right, and more effective towards that end? How do we tap into big data to help us get there? And so that's still the ultimate, reason that I joined the company, was to drive that impact. But along the way, I've been learning a lot. I've been growing a lot. I get challenged and stretched every day and every week as we scale. And so it keeps it fun and exciting, but it's also helpful to just know that there's an ultimate goal that you're working towards as a company, right? That there's a vision to bring human values into the pricing equation. Yes. So hopefully that answers.
No, I think that's fantastic. And again, the best candidates today want to work at a company that has a purpose, has a reason to be, besides making rich people richer. And,
right.
As I think about, again, this inflationary environment that we're in, and how much is gasoline in California right now? $7 or something insane. And I mean, people are feeling a lot of pressure. Their paycheck has not gone up commensurately with inflation.
Yeah.
And so they have to be more choiceful. And, because the dollar only goes as far as the dollar goes. And so when you're doing something that helps people align their spend with their values and helps them, kind of live their best life, if you will, with buying, that matters. I mean, that's a human good that you're accomplishing. So I applaud you guys for that. It's not just data and science and stuff. Real people's lives are getting better.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And if you can even start by aligning supply and demand more efficiently, so that you incorporate what people actually care about and incorporate what they're truly willing to pay with what they pay at the stand, then that makes a huge difference too. So there's a way to make an impact now, right? Particularly with everything you're describing with inflation, and there's a way to build towards a better future on how these transactions even come about. So it's exciting. It's exciting, and it's challenging. So the other thing I might mention is startups are not for those who are faint of heart, and you have to really be addicted to environments where things are evolving and dynamic, and where you have to be hungry for that ownership, because ultimately, if you don't go and embrace that ownership comes to you, right? So absolutely be cognizant of the type of company that you're looking to apply for, and making sure that it matches what you're looking for from a lifestyle perspective. But if it does, it can be one of the best decisions you've ever made, and it can absolutely accelerate your career.
No, super cool. And the sort of the point we were making earlier around, if you want to be an E5, and that's all, and you're comfortable in that, that's cool. Good for you. If you want something more, not even more, but different, that is more energizing and satisfying, then I totally agree with you. But there is that other side of the coin. It's like, it's not built yet. Like, we're still building a lot of this stuff. And, if that turns you on and you like doing that, awesome. And if it's like, well, how come we don't have one of those yet? Because that's what we're going to go do after lunch. We're going to go make that. So anyway, this has been great, Edris. Thank you so much. I think that you've just hit on so many of the notes of why we want to do this series and help people see that, the CEO at some company that's raised a bunch of money, say, he's a nice guy, and they have real values, and, can communicate what that value is, and the value proposition of the company. So, no surprise to me that you guys have raised a bunch of money. I'm sure there's a Series E around the corner, or an IPO or something cool. But wish you the best of luck. And again, thank you so much for investing a few minutes today. It's a great story, and we're just really proud to be able to share it.
Thank you, Bob. It's a great program. And if anyone's interested in learning more about Engage3, feel free to add Yesenia Resendez on LinkedIn, or email her. She's our lead recruiter. So
we will add that to the show notes at the end so that people have that. So perfect. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Cheers.